myself, okay. I said to this dude, all right, listen, man, this is what we're gonna do. Let's turn this into a thought experiment, right? And I was like, would you be willing to agree that if we had, let's say, 100 patients, 100 terminally ill patients, right? And I was like, let's give them all the same medical treatment, right?
Yeah.
But we pray for half the group and we don't pray for the other half of the group, right? And then afterwards, um, if the one group tends to have a higher survival rate than the other group, or seem better afterwards, right? Then clearly we can infer that there is something operative here that is not medical, right? So we have to take into account supernatural things. So,
Yeah.
so to me, when I wrote this, when I put this up there, I'm like, I don't think it's possible for a rational, even-minded, taking into account all the various factors of life type of person could possibly disagree with this post. Ha la la. The first thing the dude shoots me is, why does it have to be one? Why does it have to be 100 people? Can't it just be one? And I'm like, dog. Nah, because sample sizes are like a real thing. So only having a sample
Yeah.
size of one would be proof of literally nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
So that doesn't work. And then I'm like, okay, how about 10? Right? 10. Are you Gucci with 10? Let's do 10. If five not prayed for, five prayed for. Let's see which five fare better at the end of the day. Then the guy goes on this weird tangent when he's like, no, if these people want to be healed as terminal patients, right, they must go to church because that'll show that they actually have faith and God works on faith. And then, yeah, that's going to be the solution. So yeah.
I, you know what bugs me, man? As I'm listening to what you're saying, what this O is saying, I feel like, folks when they reason like that, they don't want to. I don't know if they've ever sat down and acknowledged the fact that that the omnipotent being that they believe in, eh, must be one hell of a conceited being. If 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 the thing that he created, for whatever reason that he created, if his creation has to also constantly shower him with praise and all, like, how much conceit is there? Like, I'm just like, I guys, no, yeah.
It's flabbergasting. And I
like,
just,
like, I'm just like, that's the one thing that bugs me, is that you want me to believe in this omnipotent being, this creator of the universe, creator of life and all things related to it. Nah, and you're telling me this omnipotent being who somehow has let his creation be the way that it is right now. Yeah?
mm,
For him to get involved, there must be prayer and praise.
yeah.
Secondly, prayer and praise notwithstanding, that might not even be enough.
That might not
Because
be enough. Yeah.
that might not be enough because it's all part of this ambiguous plan. Ambiguous plan for what? I no.
It's like that same guy. Then you tuned. My personal favorite. You put this post, right, where he's like, even if Jesus himself came to him and told him that he's not real, he wouldn't believe. He wouldn't. I was like, what? I was like, eh?
I
Okay.
but
That makes
that makes
absolutely no
fuck no
sense.
sense.
It makes absolutely no sense. I was like, dude,
I
okay,
don't know. Like, I yeah, nah. Uh,
okay,
that's some bullshit.
I, bro.
No, that's some bullshit.
Uh, it was, it was amazing, dude.
I
But
no,
I,
I can't. Yeah. I
uh,
can't.
okay, let's do this. Let's get down to some kind of business. Oh, lol. This was funny. I was testing recording, but I was kind of recording this whole time, lol. Which is, what, actually, given the topic of today's conversation, me inadvertently recording stuff sounds like a thing that a man would say, right? Oh, my bad. The camera was just on. I didn't mean for it. It was just, what am I gonna do now? Oh, and now I just happened to upload it. My bad. Like, it's chill.
Thematically, it sounds relevant, I guess.
Oh man. All right. So, Saint Dean, Ndimphiwe, welcome back. Another episode on Curveboard. Once again, we're gonna agree. It's gonna annoy me, actually.
We'll see. Considering that even though we agree most of the time, what I sometimes realize is that on minute details will differ somewhat.
Yeah, but then we end up having to be like splitting hairs. And it's
Yeah.
like, those are conversations usually for a beer and a joint.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about a thing which is, very prevalent. It's occupying a lot of our mental headspace, I would imagine. The issue concerning women, or specifically the treatment that men give towards women in terms of sexual harassment, women being comfortable in the workplace, our general respect towards women, attitudes towards feminism, misogyny, all these things. Actually, before we begin, Dee, let's see. Here, I think we might have some cause of disagreement. The other day, somebody was asking me, "Am I a feminist?" Right? And I honestly didn't know how to answer the question, because I said to her, I was like, okay, I would agree with pretty much all feminist principles, barring one or two here or there. But I'm not sure of if it makes sense for me as a dude to self-ascribe as a feminist. Obviously, it's
Okay, that's an interesting
Yeah.
paradigm, because like, full disclosure, one of the things that I sometimes struggle with is the minefield of how to treat feminism, right? So on one level, like, for the most part, I agree with feminism as a concept. I agree with most of what it stands for, right? Beyond extremes and counterpoints that are also on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as extremes. But at the same time, what makes it difficult for me to just slap on the label of feminist is one, is this directly my cause? Can I outwardly say this is my cause, even though I'm a proponent of equal rights, equal treatment, equal respect, and all those things? Is this my right? Is this my fight as a man primarily? Like, it sometimes it ends up feeling like you are. Yeah, this is the minefield that you deal with sometimes as someone who's aware of the way that the current situation when it comes to either feminism or its emergent opponent, men's rights activism,
Yeah.
is, you as a guy, are you now, instead of being an ally, are you now taking over something that's not primarily about you? Which
Yeah.
is why, for me, it's difficult, because in principle, if ultimately you agree with all those principles and you are involved in trying to enact what the vision of that movement is, then logically you probably are. But at the same time, ascribing that label to yourself is difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where asking yourself, at what point can you ever actually legitimately call yourself an ally? Like, people have to, like, ascribe that to you. Kind of like when I sort of think about it in terms of movements in for racial discrimination, where you can be a white person, right? And as a white person, you can always say to yourself, okay, I'm definitely against racism. I'm definitely against any form of racial bias in that way. But you will simply because you'll never be black or you'll never be whatever minority in the country you're in, right? Well, um, some person's probably gonna respond and say, "Hey, there's been racism against whites too," but I'd like, I'm sure somewhere there's been in history some country where white people were, you know, legislatively marginalized in that way. But I'd have to wiki that shit because I don't think I can think of any examples off the top of my head. But in any event, if you are one of these people, you can't, because you'll never share that experience, right? All you can ever be is an ally, and you can never. It's always disingenuous when somebody starts out by calling themselves an ally, right? And one of the things I was thinking about in terms of why I didn't want to agree, but just call myself a feminist. Do you know a guy called Jordan Peterson?
Not sure I've heard the name.
All right, you're a lucky man. But anyway, Jordan Peterson, one of the things that he says, one of the few salient things that he speaks about was you're saying that like men often self-ascribe the label of feminist, right? You'll often find that it's these sneaky guys who are using the label and the movement as a way to position themselves closer to women, and now since you're in the space where you can make yourself be that understanding guy, you're that one guy that gets it, you understand, and then suddenly you're in there and now you're the only guy in the space. You're free to spit game in whatever direction you want to, and when he said that, what bothered me was I was like, shit man, I can think of at least 3 people I know, 3 bras right now, who 100% fulfill that stereotype, or that description. So, and those guys would very happily call themselves feminists. So then it's like, I haven't really tried to use feminism as a tool to hit on somebody in a while. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I want to call myself feminist. I guess like if I ever break up with Bae and I need to get a new girlfriend, then the first thing I'm going to do is change my Twitter profile to be a feminist.
Holy shit, that is rough. Oh yeah, jeez. Basically, the I think this label tends to frustrate me sometimes, but I guess that's the cookie cutter white knight.
Oh yeah, yeah. I get white knight accusations often, dog.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I said, it's actually a hell of a minefield as a guy who is for equal rights to engage with men and sometimes even with women, because you end up asking yourself, like, you are out here calling out other men on their bullshit. You are out here pushing all these rights, all these things that should be happening in favor of women to equalize the landscape. But at what point are you taking away their own agency? That's a question that I sometimes grapple with. At what point am I now no longer just helping, but now I am taking away their agency and ability to, do things on their own? Where at what point do you reach that level?
Even there though, it gets complicated because I don't think it's necessarily as cut and dry as that. Because let's say you're in a situation where you're around a group of women, right? You're around a group of people, let's say. Some are women, some are men. And then you find that all of them tend to harbor some fairly regressive attitudes about women. Let's say everybody in the room is advocating for women being in the kitchen, getting pregnant on time, making sure that she's cooking her husband dinner, all that shit.
Yeah.
You would, by disagreeing, right? Let's say you advocate differently, right? In that moment, you would definitely be taking away agency from those women to speak their mind, and you would in fact be telling them that now, if they say that that's the only role for women, you would in fact end up having to say, no, you're wrong about what women should do, but then you're saying this to women, which is like, all right, and then as
murky waters.
It's extremely murky waters because, like one of the things is that not all things women say are feminist by default.
Yeah.
Like feminism requires work from people, which is also a difficult thing because you have to like unpack a lot from yourself. But let's deal with this, right? Because a lot of the things that feminism advocates for is things that us as men have to genuinely deal with, right? And one of the reasons why this conversation I think is salient is this past was on the weekend or a week before. there was a situation in which one of my coworkers was being harassed by a client, and I'm sure,
Anyways,
yeah, and I'm sure if you had to ask him, or like he was saying things to her, making her really uncomfortable, right? Because you were saying to her, what did he say to her? He was saying to her like, no, there's something special about you, and like, um, there's something spiritual, and you might need help exploring that part of your life. Just being a general creepy type of dude, right?
mm,
Um, and then as I was reflecting on this, right, I started to think about how often would it have been the case that my own behavior in the past would have made somebody uncomfortable, right? And it's really difficult to reflect on because obviously you don't behave in ways that make you uncomfortable very often, right? For the like
yeah.
99% of the time, you're behaving exactly as you think is the right thing to do.
Mm.
So so now
Which
like
means your perspective is a little bit warped in terms of assessing where could I have potentially made someone uncomfortable.
yeah, exactly, right? And I think the best way to see this is, have you seen how guys tend to respond when they get told that their behavior is making someone uncomfortable? And it's very rarely somebody says, "Oh, I had no idea that this was this way. My bad. I apologize. Clear, I'm gonna stop this behavior." Right? Usually it's incredulousness. They're like, "How could this possibly bother you? What's the beef? I love getting licked at the back of my neck in the club. What's up with you?"
I mean, this is this kind of even stretches. This is a thing that stretches, not to go on a tangent, but this is kind of a thing that tends to go even beyond male to female interactions. This is a thing that goes where there's one group that you can argue is the power group and the underprivileged group. Now, usually someone will tell you, listen, what you are saying right now is actually not great, or it's making someone uncomfortable, or it's making them feel belittled, etc., etc. And the response is it's down to the fact that people haven't been told enough that no, this isn't how to conduct yourself with certain groups because of the historical context of their own lived experiences. Like, so that incredulity that you're mentioning, it I don't know, it comes from a very weird place.
Yeah, it comes from a, well, no, let's not. I don't think you can. It comes from a weird place. It comes from a place of privilege. I feel like that's,
Yeah, fair enough.
you
Yeah.
know, there's kind of like an
Okay.
X
Yeah.
marks on
Let's
the
let's
map.
call it what it is.
Yeah, it's like it's because you haven't had to. For instance, like let's think about this issue of catcalling, right?
Mhm.
I've been catcalled exactly twice in my life. Um, Once when I was, I think, 17,
Mm.
um, and once when I was like 21. When I was 17, it was actually when I was 17. That was like by a group of women actually,
Mhm.
and that felt fairly uncomfortable. But the really funny one was when I was like 20, 21. Do you
Mhm.
remember that time I had braids?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a garbage idea, but at the time that I had braids, I remember once being catcalled by a group of bras in a baki, I think. And obviously they'd seen me from behind and hadn't realized that I'm a man's. And then and when that happened, I was like, "Oh shit, this is pretty garbage!" Like, man. But at the time, I didn't really read too much into it. Back then I
Yeah.
was
Because for you, it's an oddity.
yeah, I was just like, "Oh, this is just this random thing that happened.
Mm.
Um, that doesn't really mean much, right?" But then when you think about, for example, the experience of a woman who it's if I'm a woman walking in the streets, right? I think it's relatively, at least from what I've seen, and what I've heard from people, it's unlikely that a month will go by without something like that happening. If not to me, definitely to
Sure.
someone I know.
A month is understating.
A month is understating. Yeah, I'm trying to give as much leeway as possible.
Ooh, a month is understating it.
Yeah,
Ooh, my gosh.
usually it's like a day, but
Yeah, usually it's like a day, cause if you have women in your life, and you genuinely ask specific questions of what kind of experiences they go through, someone will tell you probably if they're working in a public space, it's almost impossible to doubt that something like that happens on the regular.
I'm the regs, bro.
And to us, it sounds like to us it sounds like an exaggeration, just because we don't really experience that. It sounds it's unbelievable because we don't really experience that. But the amount of women who will tell you and confirm that it's otherwise, that is a scary thought.
Especially of late, right? It feels like as time has gone on, women have not. I was not necessarily that women have realized or decided how unacceptable this is, because it's always unacceptable. But
Mm.
the space for women to speak seems to have expanded. Because let's be honest and say that 5 years ago, if people were making the sort of noises they are now about the behavior of men, men's
Yeah,
response would have been apocalyptic. People would have told women to shut the hell up. This is bullshit. It's not so bad. You
it would have
know.
been think piece after think piece
Yeah.
saying saying that men are oppressed and things like that. You laugh. You laugh.
Oh no.
I've seen some weird justifications for men's behavior over the
Oh,
years.
my personal
Like,
favorite of late, right? Check this out. What I heard, my personal favorite is a guy saying that women who dress in scantily clad clothing, right,
yeah,
are effectively committing assaults on a man's imagination, and therefore it's impossible for him to control himself, and expecting him to do otherwise is simply unthinkable. So whenever a man ends up in a provocative situation or in a situation where he sexually assaults, harasses, or rapes a woman, usually it's because the woman left him no choice. What else could he do?
hey, I think that's probably one of the more frustrating ones. And actually, that specific one that you bring up is part and parcel the reason why a lot of women don't speak up against a lot of this stuff,
Yeah.
because they know if a woman tells you that a year ago something happened to her, she was harassed at an office, or she was sexually assaulted to the point of rape, anything like ranging from different levels of severity. The immediate response from everyone around her, including the people probably close to her, nah,
Yeah.
that aren't women who don't deal with that, and even some of the women, because of the way we've ingrained in them that this is natural behavior that happens, and it's usually because of you. It can range from things like saying, what were you wearing, um how were you engaging with these men, did you say something that could have been construed as flirting, like, and you ask yourself, and then comes the question of, did you report this if you felt uncomfortable, and if you did you have enough to build a case? Like, you have situations where women report things to their HR company, like to the HR departments, and the HR departments say there's not enough to
Yeah.
go off of, even if they blatantly know, and all they're doing is protecting a brand and so forth. And like, the level of idiocy that usually comes out as a response to things like that is actually, it's frightening.
Let's actually grapple with that particular point that you bring up about
Yeah.
the evidential bar that's required to gain a conviction or any kind of resolution in a sex crimes
Mm.
case, right? Um, Very often when I speak to people, they say that part and parcel of the reason why there's such a resistance on their part, for example, to immediately to believe that claims are credible from the onset, is
Yeah.
that there is a possibility that it could ruin someone's life, right? That a false accusation could come up, suddenly this person's reputation, their livelihood,
Mm.
and possibly even like their important relationships are suddenly taken away, arrested from their control.
Yes.
What do you actually make of this? Do you think the issue of false accusation is prevalent enough to justify the rampant skepticism from men, as to not believing women when these things come up?
So this is where it starts getting murky, right? Because yes, that there is a percentage of women out there who are actually bad people, and it's not like they haven't used the system to fuck over other people. That has happened. We've seen a couple of high profile cases where men potentially have spent 5 to 10 years in prison, and then later on, the woman actually admits to someone within a close circle that no, actually, that's not what happened. Like I remember there's these two contrasting cases that incensed me to no end.
Mm.
So the one guy, I can't actually recall his name. He's a black guy. He was on his way to making a football career, and he got convicted for rape. Spent 7 years in prison. Spent 7 years in prison off of circumstantial evidence, right?
Mm.
And I guess even talking about things like circumstantial evidence, now, it's a murky subject because on one level, at what point are we saying we must believe women, and then on the flip side, at the flip side, what cost does that come with if at face value we take. Now these are questions that I ask myself, even though I will advocate, listen, if a woman's coming out with something, there's there's a 90% probability that she's not lying.
Mm.
But at the same time, where does the idea of innocent until guilty, innocent until proven guilty come in? So this guy, he spent 7 years in prison, man, and then later on it came out that no, this woman actually was lying, and they came up with evidence. And then on the flip side, man, there was another case. Um, on the internet, he is colloquially known as rapist Brock Turner.
Yeah.
You remember Brock Turner,
I
don't you?
remember. Brock Turner was released from jail today, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Brock Turner on the like, it's because it's hard to say things with absolute certainty. It's hard to deal with absolutes in these situations because there's other levels of politics that play into how these situations play out.
Mm.
But with that being said, with these two cases being brought up, the the percentage of false allegations versus allegations with merit versus situations where 10 women are telling where 10 women are coming out and saying this happened to me by the same guy. At what point do you say, guys, why is our first instinct to attack the women?
Yeah. And that,
Like, actually, that's actually what we probably should be addressing. Like, it's one thing to say innocent until proven guilty, but that's not the response they're getting. That actually isn't the response that women are getting when it comes to situations like this. The response that they're getting is it's on the level of an attack, of a personal attack. You
yeah.
are a liar. You probably were wearing you were scantily clad. You were provoking this person in some manner, and that is actually what probably we should be addressing.
Yeah, and that inclination towards attacking women stays throughout the entire process, right? So, like you
Yeah.
were saying now, so this is what normally happens. One person will come forward and say, "Yo, this person did something," especially if there's a time gap in between the
Yeah.
actions and the people coming forward and the allegations. So, someone comes forward and
Statute of
says,
limitations, and some of
"Yeah."
them would say.
No, but this is what always happens. Like someone will say, "Yo, this person sexually harassed me, they attacked me, they raped me," and then men will be like, us bras will say, "Nah, what's up with you? Like, what's happening here? Oh, if it was such a big thing, why didn't you come up immediately? Why are you only coming out now? Oh, it's because he's got money or whatever." And then when there's a ton of women coming forward, then for some reason we still make it an attack on the women by saying, "Oh, all of you were attacked by this guy. Why did you just let him slide? Were you just willing to live with this? What's up with you guys? Why didn't you guys get justice?" So it seems like I think what a lot of it is, right, is that as men, it's very easy, right? And I think this is a lie we convince ourselves a lot of when in conversation, right? it's very easy to imagine that that women control the entire sexual encounter, right?
Yeah.
That everything that relates to sex and sexuality is controlled by the woman. So, for example, people will be like, "Yo, bro, you gotta get her to do this, make her feel this way, and it's all gonna be good, right?" So, it becomes this two-part thing where for instance, it becomes a thing where you as a man don't even feel like you can say no if a woman is into you, or let's say a woman wants to have sex with you, right? You don't feel you have any right to say no because that's what she wants.
Yeah.
So we convince, and this is definitely a lie, definitely illusory. By the way, anybody who's not sure, 100% not true. Obviously, you should get consent from women, but if you watch any and most sexual encounters are actually controlled by us as hombres. We're the ones who go and initiate the contact. We're the ones buying the drinks, getting people loosened up. We're the ones suggesting, hey, let's go hang out at this place. We're the one driving the girls around. There's, with the exception of, I would imagine, consent, there's very little that we as men are comfortable with women doing regarding our sex lives, right? Like,
Yeah.
we as guys are even afraid of women approaching us. It's always weird when someone's like, "Yo, this girl hit on me." It's a story. It's a tale. It's like everyone has that one tale of this one time I was looking so hot that this woman couldn't help herself. She had to hit on me. So, because of that, we also get the sense that if anything should go wrong in that sexual encounter, therefore the logical person to blame is the woman.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Which is interesting because I think what people fail to realize is usually in these situations, and this is probably what normally leads women to not speak up as they happen or when they happen or in a short time period, is that people forget that where men and women are involved as far as interactions go, there is a power dynamic. There's a power dynamic, and usually, like you just attested to, men in that situation seem to be the ones holding the power. And when they're holding the power, we also, because it's not like we're just saying, hey, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? When you're dealing with a situation where there's a power dynamic and you have influence over this woman, they also end up asking themselves, what did I do wrong in this situation for it to go out like this? And that's usually why you end up with situations where they don't speak up immediately. Like, I mean, if you look through the most recent high profile situations where your Harvey Weinsteins right now, when you look through the testimonials of how things went down, there was a power dynamic that was set up,
yeah,
that was implicit when these women were involved in that situation. Why? You're talking to this big shot producer. He may or may not influence how your career goes. So that already makes you wary of either shutting him down or talking about it if something happens that you were not consenting to.
more
And
than
that is the thing that permeates how men and women interact, because in some fashion a lot of us set up a power dynamic.
More than that, men tend not to want to engage in relationships where there isn't a power dynamic.
Yeah.
Men tend not to want, for instance, men tend not to want equals. Men
Yeah.
want somebody that you can loom over, somebody younger than you, somebody poorer than you, somebody less educated than you, somebody in a lower job, like corporate position, just in some way. It's rare that you find a man who primarily advocates for being with somebody that has some sway of power over them, right? Usually the guy will say, nah, you want to be the man of the relationship. You want to be that nigga, You don't want to be the guy out here. I mean, consider how we as guys react just to that situation. Whenever it's pretty clear that the woman has the primary power in a relationship, what's
Yeah.
the general response of guys is, man, look at that bitch ass nigga. What the fuck's up with him, man?
Yeah.
Like, look at this guy sauntering around, can't control his woman. She's telling him what to do. She gives him lunch money. She drives him around. He got a tattoo of her name on his chest. What the fuck? What's going on here? So, as men, we're really bad at not or like at not wanting to engage in that power. We're like, no, we
Yeah.
want to be the guy on top. So it basically makes it impossible after the fact to, given that we normalize this power dynamic, right? And we
Yeah.
assume we both normalize the power dynamic, but also assume that the woman is the one with said power in not in a normative sense.
Yeah.
So that makes it very difficult to see when these cases come up, especially with someone in power, right? It makes it hard for us to see why this would be the case that a woman would not feel compelled to come forward immediately and to report this. Because in our minds, we're like, yo, if something happens to me, I want people to know right now. Not
Mm.
taking into account that even seeing that requires some level of power and some level of agency that is
Yeah.
not always afforded to women in that particular case. But another thing that we also have to explore when it comes to these situations is the fact that men, by and large, tend tend to have a different categorization of what constitutes assault, what constitutes harassment, what constitutes rape,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So when a woman comes forward and says, "Yo, this guy harassed me, or you harassed me, or these things happened,"
Mm.
the response from us is, "Oh, but that's fine though." It's like,
Mm.
what's the big deal? For instance, with like um, some guy giving your legs a pat, you know,
Yeah.
like he didn't rape you, he didn't touch
Seems
you,
like something innocuous that's of no consequence.
right? Exactly. Or what's the big deal with some guy coming and saying to you that, "Oh, I bet you'd look amazing naked," you know, like weird,
Yeah.
creepy things.
Yeah.
And to us, as for by and large, it's like, oh, these are things that I wouldn't mind if someone said to me.
Yeah.
So what's the problem? What's the
It
issue?
it comes down it got with that. It goes back to the frequency in which we experience these things
Yeah,
versus how they experience this thing. If this is your normal everyday life and people within the hour you've probably either been catcalled or someone's made some comment, some creepy comment about how you look or how you'd be in bed and so forth, ranging from like different levels. This is their everyday experience. Whereas to us, because it's one of those experiences that are notable just because they are so odd in terms of frequency with us. Where like, yeah, I wouldn't mind if a girl came up to me and slapped my ass because that's not my everyday experience.
yeah. The moment it becomes like I can't go anywhere without my ass basically being a magnet, then
Mm.
there's some days you don't necessarily feel like having your ass slapped, and on those days it would be nice if people refrained.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, as we're talking about this now, right? There's something we still have to deal with. Is this idea as it stands right now of men being oppressed, right? You mentioned it earlier, especially in response
Yep.
to the men's rights movements, meninists, as it were.
Yeah.
What do you think's driving that? Because that's one thing I I genuinely struggle with seeing how a person can survey the lay of the land with access to the same information that I have access to, and yet emerge with the conclusion that men are currently being persecuted and are the lower gender in society at the moment.
Oh man, there, there we go into the MRAs. Um, geez, where to even begin? So I don't know. So on some level, I might say that maybe maybe it comes with what some might argue as a response to aggressive feminism,
Mm.
or what they might categorize as aggressive feminism. Because movements aside, the loudest voices in any movement are usually the polarizing ones.
Yeah.
Usually the polarizing ones, and the kind of positive reaction that follows them is is also within their own sphere of engagement. So you've got the people who some might argue, um, man haters, the radical feminist, if this is their loud voice, and as opposed to people paying attention to what the majority of feminism is, and their response is to radical feminists who are telling you men are a scourge that should be purged and things like that.
All men are rapists, that kind of shit.
All men all men are rapists and things like that. The response from that, it goes back to something you and I once discussed. People feeling attacked
Yeah.
because you end up in a situation because I wouldn't say it's an oppressive thing, but if you have to grow up with the I don't know, with hearing voices constantly saying men are bad, men are men are not a great positive influence in women's life and things like that. If that's the record that's constantly playing in your mind, and you harbor the feeling that you are not like that,
Mm.
then if you don't sit down and assess why, where does this come from? If you are those people who don't assess where is this coming from, then the natural response is that you are being attacked, and if you are being attacked, you are being oppressed. It's like the Black Lives Matter thing. It's like the Black Lives Matter thing.
I kind of
But
feel though. I agree with you, right? That it's definitely that you take on the extremist voices, you hear this, and you're not necessarily think about where it comes from. Therefore, you feel like
Yeah.
you're in a bad position, right? But even those extremist voices that exist, for example, that'll say the women that'll say men are all rapists and the scourge of the earth and in some way inferior to women. The black people that will say that white people are garbage, they should just be killed, just kicked out of the country because they've ruined everything. As much as
those type of things.
yeah, as much as I would categorically disagree with those people, right, who would say such
Yeah.
things, right, I can't help but think that in some sense it's a good thing that these people exist, right? Because okay, so here's how I flesh it out. Jesse. Tell me if this makes sense to you. As you sketched out, the extremist positions always come up in any given sphere of thought or ideology, right?
Yeah.
Now, the more agency and legitimacy that ideology gains, the extremism moves, right? Extremism is not a fixed point. So, for instance, if you found an extremist in 1910, right, an extreme
Yeah.
feminist would be somebody saying women deserve jobs and a woman can be president, right? That would be an extreme position. An extreme position in like 1880 would be someone saying that black people are in every way equal to white people, right? Now, as these positions gain legitimacy, they gain more followers, right? The middle expands, becomes a real center, and the extremes get pushed out into crazier and crazier positions, right? So over time, I think you can recognize the legitimacy of any given position by examining its extremes. And if the extremes seem especially crazy, and you're like, whoa, that makes literally no sense, no matter how you think about it, right? Then I think it usually points to the fact that enough engagement has happened at the middle that logic has more or less reigned at that space. And the majority are probably operating in a space that's not crazy, it's not insane. They're like, okay, we've made contact with the real world. We understand, for instance, that black people are the same as white people. It's all good. Understand that women are the same as men in most respects that matter, really. Therefore, the only place for the extremists to hide is in legitimately untenable places, right? Positions that are not tenable by any stretch of imagination. So, I think it's kind of so. What I'm getting to is that when you hear people saying such things, that when you hear like the fact that a lot of people are starting to say, "Yo, white people should just be killed," whatever. The middle, because it doesn't seem like the middle is saying that, right? If the middle starts saying that, then we've got some problems. But as long as it's the extremists who are the only people taking up this kind of vanguard call, it's like, okay, it's a good thing, because not good that you're saying these things, but it's good that the only place you feel free to express it is on the extreme margins. But the fact that you can do this at all shows that your base ideology has now gained legitimacy across the board, to the extent that it's now possible for you to take refuge in audacity, because now the good places, that space has been monopolized by rational people now.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? It's kind of how I feel about it
Yeah,
whenever I
no,
see.
it makes sense. It makes sense in the sense that when you actually think about it, that should be the logical train of thought.
Should be, but
It should be.
not not
but,
not always what happens.
but that's not always what happens. So yeah, I'll be honest. It does baffle me when folks say men are oppressed. it,
Yeah.
it baffles me, like, and it baffles me especially when we start talking about black men. When we start talking about black men, I feel like these are people who should understand what oppression is,
Yeah.
and be able to distinguish being challenged on your ideological thinking and the way you treat people versus being oppressed.
Yeah, there's a big difference between being in chains and simply not being allowed to slap your wife anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of a. We're splitting hairs a little bit here,
Yeah.
but there's a small differentiation.
Like,
You know,
because you have to ask, right? When we say men are being oppressed, what are they experiencing that can be categorized as being oppressed? Because sure, like, let's not discount that things do happen to men.
yeah.
Things do happen to men. Men also get raped, and sometimes they get
Yes.
raped by women.
Yes, they
Like,
do. Yes, they do.
that happens. Let's not discount that, right? But the frequency of that experience versus the woman's experience, let's also not discount how lopsided that is.
Yeah.
Let's not discount that. And then on top of that, beyond that, what are men experiencing when they say they are being oppressed? What is oppression to them?
I think it's just that every now and then feminists look at you with the stank eye.
Hmm?
Then you feel like trash, You're like, what the hell? I'm not trash. I'm not awful.
So is it possible? Is it possible that what they're categorizing as oppression is being changed on a fundamental level, or being challenged on a fundamental level as far as their ideology? Because if you're challenging someone's foundation, someone's ideological foundation, and the kind of challenge you're bringing to them is the kind of change that might force them to change their entire being, how they conduct themselves. Might that be what they're categorizing as being oppressed? And if that is the case, then somewhere there's a gap in logic.
Well, if that's the case,
Because
then you just need to man the fuck up, right?
like, like if that is the case, because we may say that people feel attacked if you're telling them their entire ideology is incorrect and they have to change for the better, or change for what is perceived as the better. If that is what's being categorized as oppression, then I mean, white people could have said the same thing. I mean, and I mean,
Why people
some of
are
them
saying the
probably,
same thing, dog.
well, yeah, white people are saying the same thing. Like, if you're saying that me challenging the way you think on a fundamental level about a different group of people, and the fact that your treatment of those people in relation to those people is incorrect, then sure, I'm challenging you to change as a human being. But if that is categorized as oppression, yeah, hey, then it's a problem.
Basically, anything's oppression at that point. Then there's like nothing we can. Then just like having a basic conversation to change your mind is oppression. It's like, yo,
Yeah,
it's like, hey, don't treat
that's pretty much
people
what it amounts to.
like subhumans. That's oppression, I guess.
Mm.
So let's actually. Well, one of the things that often comes up, right, is people saying that other men shouldn't have to be either responsible or taken to be complicit in the actions of other men, right? People have the ability to self-individuate, to self-determinate. Therefore, any and all actions that an individual man takes cannot be used as ammunition towards behavior within the group as a large, right? I don't.
That's a cop out, man.
I also feel it is a cop out
That's
because
a cop out.
I feel like maintaining that position basically advocates for never changing the status quo
Yeah,
because I feel
it's
like
comfortable.
yeah, change. I think like large scale change especially on a fundamental societal level like this, requires basically everybody to feel. It requires some people to feel aggrieved, obviously, but requires everyone to feel responsible, right? You have to feel like, in some sense, this is your problem.
Mm.
Otherwise, people don't solve other people's problems. You solve problems because you're like, all right, I'm taking responsibility. This is my problem now, and it feels like trying to dodge the question makes it impossible for you to feel responsible enough to change things because here's the annoying thing, right, is that on some level, right, the argument does actually make sense when you say, so for instance, let's say I see somebody that I'm not their friend, I'm not their homeboy, I'm just a guy that I know, and I happen to pass him and I see him from far away and he's harassing a woman, right, in some way. He's grabbing her or he's talking to her, but she's clearly uncomfortable by what's happening right now. But this guy is not relenting. Let's say he's blocking her path to walking away or whatever, right? I could easily say in that moment, yo, I'm not the police. I'm not a security officer. I don't really know this guy. I don't know this woman. What can I do? Why is
Yeah.
this my problem? This is definitely a messed up thing to have happen, but it's not my problem, and it's also not my fault. I'm not a bad guy for not doing anything, for not saying anything. This. I'm just chilled. I wouldn't treat a woman like that, but yo, that's his business.
Mm.
And you can, although one could easily say that you're abdicating your responsibility to just help other people in need. You can see why this particular brand of logic is persuasive to people, right?
Mm. Yeah, it washes their hands.
Yeah,
It washes their hands off of responsibility. But here's the thing, like it's a cop out. It's a cop out because people tend to make it as cut and dry as that kind of scenario. That kind
yeah,
of scenario, sure. It on a lot of levels, there's logic to that scenario and the way it would play out as you're describing it.
mm,
But but that's not where it starts. That's not where it ends because guys around you, your friends or or colleagues or whatever the relation is, we may somebody may make what might come off as well, what might be a misogynistic joke.
mm,
The response of quote unquote good men in that situation, whether or not there might be a woman present or not, that may either escalate the response. But the natural response would probably be to laugh at that type of joke,
yeah,
regardless of what the ideological foundation of making those kinds of jokes is. And that to some degree is being complicit, whether we can say it's implicit that you're complying with this, but there's levels to how complicit we are if we're not actively fighting against bullshit like that.
yeah. This actually reminds me of that. There was a thing that happened on some Facebook group about the Dota 2 Facebook group regarding
Yeah.
racism, and I think the overall conclusion that we ended up reaching about that was that if you are, like, silence is basically complicity. If silence about the status quo is complicity, like if you're not
Yeah.
engaged in doing some shit about it, then it's like, yo, dog, then you're fine with it basically. Because if you weren't
Yeah.
fine with it, then you'd want to change it.
Yeah,
Um,
because the thing is, what it says, or the kind of message that it sends is, hey, listen, it's not happening to me, so whatever, I'm cool with
mm.
it. That's what it is, and that is a problem.
I also think that this idea about, I think a lot of it comes down to this idea of libertarian individualism, right? People have become
Yeah,
very accustomed to this, or the school of thought growing is that you are in fact a pure individual. You exist more or less alone upon
yeah,
planet Earth. Therefore, you're only responsible for your own actions, your own decisions. and what happens with others is not really within your purview, right? Which kind of ignores the fact that we are social creatures. You actually can't live alone,
Yeah,
and
you don't live in a vacuum.
more importantly, living in society is better than living alone, right? The moment you admit that, then or living around other people better than living alone, which you put yourself in a social context now.
Yeah.
The moment you admit that, then you realize, okay, living in a society that is better for everyone was likely better for me as well, given that everyone around me is happier, freer, more able to pursue their dreams. Just happy people are nicer to be around than unhappy people. So once you do that, then you're like, oh, now I can't be okay with the other members of my society being unhappy in a not just on an individual basis, but on a group
On a
level,
large scale.
on a group class level. People are unhappy about something, and since I'm a participant in this particular society, I can't just do nothing, right? I can't just abdicate responsibility and say, nah, y'all are individuals, handle this shit yourself, be stronger, whatever. I kind of have to get involved, which is very annoying, because that requires me to do something. But I don't think there's any real way around that, right? I don't
There
think there's,
isn't. I
yeah,
mean, there isn't, because the thing that I normally point to is people need to look at history, right? Where where there are oppressed classes, oppressed groups, and the likes. These are groups that don't have, like, they don't have the power that the environment has given another group. They don't. So as much as they have the agency to do a lot of things, they still, to some degree, like, there is an onus of involvement from the privileged groups, because I mean, on some level there had to be some white people involved during apartheid,
yeah,
because if only black voices are telling you this is wrong, if only black voices are telling you this is wrong, how does apartheid end?
yeah.
Because
Then
the
it's
white
instant
people the
bloodshed.
white people around you are okay. They're like, no, this doesn't affect us. What's wrong with it?
Actually, it does affect us, but very positively.
Yeah.
So, so I want to keep
Yeah,
this around.
how does the status quo change if no one from that group is saying, guys, this is wrong? That doesn't change.
Yeah,
So obviously, with that in mind, that means that it's the same. Like, if we aren't calling out other guys, if we aren't being active, the message that, because we're like, whether we like it or not, we're the ones who carry power.
yep,
We carry power. So if a woman's telling a guy, and this is the unfortunate thing. If a woman tells a guy this is wrong, they may feel incensed, they may be surprised. But if a guy is telling if another guy is telling you, listen, you are crazy, this you shouldn't be treating people like this, then it's like, oh, the voice of reason is different.
yeah,
and
and
it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate state of affairs, but that's why they have to get involved.
yep. That's why it has to be us telling our homies, yo, jokes like that ain't funny. Yo, can't just be talking about like rating women 1 to 10 on every particular occasion.
Yeah.
Yo, giving nicknames to a girl such as like, I don't know, boob window or some shit, also not cool. Yeah, there's like a whole suite of things in which we as men sometimes we don't individually necessarily realize that something, and this is not just with regard to us men and women, but
Yeah.
you don't always know how your behavior bothers other people. But
Yeah.
what you can do is be receptive to that criticism when it does come.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, as you mentioned, we as humans usually are more receptive when the person has power in that particular situation. So
Yeah.
an unfortunate quirk of human psychology, but
Mhm.
one that we can actually exploit in our own favor this time, or to the favor of our society. Because
Yeah.
again, it's one thing. That's also one thing I don't understand. Is like people will talk about how feminism has gone too far. People are rampant. It's now moral panic. Everything is about harassment now. I've seen pictures of guys who are being like, yo, I'm just never going to talk to women again. I'm never going to hit on a girl again because I don't know if she's going to harass or whatever. You know what's weird?
That's alarmist drivel, man.
It feels like so many men have skipped the obvious solution in terms of figuring out what's appropriate and not appropriate and just asking women. I feel like that's like a really quick shortcut to figure out what you can and can't do. Just ask the person and say, yo, can I do this thing? And if I can't, let me know so I won't do it. And then it'll be cool.
So there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things actually that I want to bring up. Like, so what I've come to realize right now in this weird bubble of time that we're in right now, where more women are coming out, a lot of men are being put to task as far as dealing with consequences, and there's a tangible effect to some degree. I'm gonna asterisk that with some degree, right? Another interesting response that I've seen from people across the spectrum is, I am tired of reading about this. Can we stop talking about this now?
Yeah.
And that concerns me, because people are then advocating apathy. Because things only get better. Like, you shouldn't be blaming people for talking about these things when they happen. What you should be doing is blaming people for doing these things.
Exactly right.
Because we're only talking about them because people are doing these things. We should keep talking about them so people understand that you do shit like this and you are now pariah. You're gone.
Yeah. Like, you're now out of you're out of everything. It's like you're a non-person now.
Yeah. Like, it bothers me when I see people say, okay, we get it. These people are assholes. Can we now stop talking about sexual harassment and sexual assault? And I'm like, but these things are happening. These are current events. How do you not talk about them?
Yeah.
Talking about them is what makes, like, because we need a spotlight on these things so that people understand just how pervasive this shit is.
More so than that, we need a spotlight on these things so we can reorient. Clearly, if it's a problem that we're here now, even if you agree, you might be tired of hearing about it, but you agree that the problem exists as it is, how do you want to solve this problem quietly? I mean, it'd be one thing if it was possible to legislate through this problem, but it isn't. So you need to actually converse to the point where the conversation becomes unnecessary, right? But as long as it is necessary and as long as these things are happening, it's like, exactly. It's kind of like how, people will say, I'm tired of talking about race and racism.
Yeah.
You're like, dog, we're tired of racists, but
that's where a logical train of thought should lead people. Like, if you shouldn't be tired about talking about this shit. What should tire you is the fact that this shit is still happening. Yeah. Like, what people also need to realize is, with the rise of people coming out now, it's not like these are recent events. It's not like this is a new thing. It's just we're at a point where now people are talking more about it. And that's what should have been happening in the first place. Because had these conversations been happening way earlier, we could have potentially been in a different time.
Moreover, in fact, like, the fact that it's happening now, the world has changed, right? And attitudes, feminism has done a great job across the board of making sure that attitudes towards women are different. As bad as it is now, it used to be worse, which is what should get to you. It should actually bother you that, like, yo, in the time that we weren't talking about this, because, like, the scale of the problem as it exists today, right, is honestly shocking and horrifying. Something that I hadn't considered, like, it's very difficult to wrap your head around just how many women are being affected by this. Basically every woman I know.
Pretty much.
Up to and including my teenage sister, so this affects every woman in some way, and I was like, oh my god, this is a terrible problem. And then you think about the fact that this used to be worse. This used to
It used
be
to be worse, and people used to be quiet.
yeah, exactly. It used to be worse and also go unreported. Moreover, there was a period in human history where not only was it worse, but it was expected, and you were the problem if you made an issue of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, okay, so as much and obviously the fact that it's better now is not simply because we as people are that great and we just sat quietly and came to these realizations on our own. No, it's because of the fact that we kept talking about it. And
Yeah, there should be a stink. There should be a
exactly.
stink. The fact that you have to talk about it means there's a problem, and that's where we should be focusing.
Yeah, like don't be like, these feminists are just making mountains out of molehills. Oh my god, so what, that guy made you uncomfortable, it's not as bad as a rape, just get off your high. I was like, nah, talk about all of it. It's like, yo, why did you feel like you had the right to make this person uncomfortable in this way? Why did you feel like she had to come up to your hotel room, or else there's no way she could get that promotion? Why did you feel like the moment you went to hit on her and then she wasn't down with it, suddenly she's that bitch? It's like, no, let's talk about these things. It's like, how my thing is that, how is it, what's the harm in talking about it? What's it gonna do for your life? It can only be a good thing. It's not like me talking about it is gonna make you more, like, it's not like suddenly as we talk about it there's gonna be a new wave of kids being like, I wasn't actually planning on raping somebody, but now that y'all brought it up, sounds like pretty lit, so I'm gonna go try that out. Thanks, guys. It's like, what's the possible negative consequence of having more conversation about this beyond your own discomfort as a person, if you say that?
I mean, beyond your own discomfort, logically there isn't. But I think what happens is people are afraid to reflect on their own attitudes and what they do when they interact with women. I think that's what makes people uncomfortable, and people don't like being uncomfortable. And it's that much of an inconvenience that talking about things is a problem.
Yeah, a genuine problem. I mean, it's like, also my thing is, why are people afraid of reflection? It's like,
Yeah.
I can't think of a single thing in my life that I've become worse at upon reflection. Where it's
Yeah,
like,
reflection is meant to grow you.
exactly, it's not like, I could do something really well, I reflect on it, and suddenly I'm trash. It's like, it only improves how you behave to other people, changes how you think about yourself in relation to other people. It's like, what could go wrong? I mean, upon reflection, I no longer challenge every woman that I think is kind of hot. I no longer immediately go to her and say, let's battle, bruh. I've learned. I've moved on now. Step Up 2 is not a real movie. It's not real life.
Hold on. Hold on. I feel like there's something to unpack there. You felt obligated to battle.
I actually did once challenge a woman to a battle. I think I was like 20 or 19, somewhere around there.
To a battle of what?
A dance battle, a battle of. And you also know I can't dance, so imagine how that was going down.
Oh god.
That's the one time I had sympathy with these men that say alcohol made me do it. Because in the moment, there was no way that was a logical thing to be doing. But somehow I managed to do it while keeping my penis in my pants. That was a surprise.
Yeah, I wanna bring something up in relation to that, right? So, I what baffles me is why all of a sudden when these things happen, men seem to lack agency
Yeah.
in their own decisions. Like, oh, alcohol made me do it, but you made the decision to drink alcohol knowing that you can't control yourself. And all these other bizarre justifications, or she was scantily clad, she was asking for it, and all these things. Like, but you as a person, what happened to your choice in engaging in such behavior? Where did that go out the window? How?
Yeah, because you're not a real person anymore. Now you're being driven by the little guy downstairs. You're a penis monster basically. And
a slave to your carnal nature.
yeah,
It
I see what you did there.
like it baffles me because on one end, like how are we saying that we had we had no choice in the matter? We
Yeah,
didn't have any agency. I couldn't control myself. Like I've heard men literally say that it is a fight to not rape a woman.
yeah, I've heard that too.
And
And you're like, dog.
I'm taken aback when I hear things like that because like just how fucked up are we if we are fighting day in day out not to sexually harass or even rape a woman?
I feel like if you, let's say you know you're a cocaine addict, right?
Yeah,
Going to Pablo Escobar's house and then saying, sorry, I didn't know I'd get high there. It's like,
yeah,
dog, if you were one of those niggas that, as much as I was deriding people earlier for like saying, let me just stay away from women, if you are one of those guys that genuinely believes that you can't be around a woman without potentially raping her, get the fuck away from her. Like, leave the room, leave the bar. Don't go to the club if you feel like going to the club is a perpetual battle between keeping yourself in line and sexually assaulting somebody. Then
yeah,
just stay at home. Like, also, that's also a brand of logic I don't understand, right? Because these are the same guys who will probably want to drive home when blitzed out of their mind, right?
oh yeah,
And you ask yourself, so you have the sense of mind to be able to navigate home, use a machine to do so, navigate robots, stay in lane, drive on speed, probably have a conversation with somebody, get into your house, get into bed, don't lose anything, and you can do all of that with a clear control and clear understanding, even if you don't remember it. But somehow, when it comes to not raping somebody, that's just a bar too high, can't be done.
yeah.
Yeah, and
That's where they draw the line.
also these guys are talking like raping a woman is a flash in the moment thing. It's like flipping a coin. It's like,
No,
oh, we were just chilling, right? I was
no,
just chilling at the bar, and then now I was raping her. Like, like seconds pass. It's like, no, like things need to happen in between you not raping somebody and then actually raping somebody.
yeah,
There's a set of like a long line of things need to occur, a chain of events that like you can't claim that you weren't in control, given how many different decisions need to be made before you even rape somebody. So it's like, nah, I've always found that excuse to be just that, an excuse for you to be a shitty human being.
yeah. Because ultimately you are an active participant every step of the way. There's an
Yes.
act one, act two, act three set
Yep.
up that takes place where there's a whole bunch of choices that are being made. So if you're telling me at no point in time amongst those steps you couldn't control yourself and say, but this is wrong, then you are just being a shitty human being. It has nothing to do with impulses, has nothing to do with impulse control or your carnal nature. No, you made choices
Yeah.
and you're a shitty human being. That's all there is to it.
I feel like if Jackie Celebi can't use the "my bad, I was drunk" excuse for ramming through a wall, you can't use it
Yeah,
for ramming through someone's pants.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
So we're getting on the hour 15 mark. Oh, actually, there is one more thing that we can cover within this, right?
Hmm?
The role of religion has not helped in these particular situations, right? I had to go there.
Why do you always do this when I'm here?
Well, I do this when anyone's here. It's all good. But
No, it certainly has not because religion, like, on such a like it's so deeply entrenched within society that what it says tends to govern how relations go between men and women.
yeah,
Like, in like I challenge someone to find me a religion. I'm sure maybe 1% of religions, maybe there's that one religion that exists where everyone's an equal. But the most the most popular relationships, whether religions, whether it's Christianity, it is Islam. uh, What else? What else is there?
Judaism,
All
Hinduism.
all the schisms within those even popular religions a lot of them have a defined place for what a man is. They have a defined place for what a woman is and how they stand in the hierarchy. And if this is governing how we think on a fundamental level, then it doesn't help in how men and women relate to each other. Because a woman's place is with the family, in the kitchen, cooking, making sure that the husband is fed. A man's job is being out there, being the hunter gatherer, and whatever fancy way it might be put as we move on in time. Either way, there's a hierarchy, and in most religions, women stand at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yep, they do. Uh, as it should be, D. That's what God intended, my nigga. Remember, man was made first.
Oh my gosh.
The thing, honestly, that gets to me, what I think would probably result in one of the biggest changes, right, is when you have more women giving. Actually, this is a way religion could help, right? If women took a more, or were given a more central role in terms of deciding the direction of their respective religions, whatever they may be, and actually had the ability to decide, like, if there were more respected women as primary religious figures, I think when we get to that point, I don't think religion's going anywhere anytime soon, sadly. When we get to that point where women are more prominent in terms of their roles in religious life, I think that's when you can legitimately say that, okay, now we've made a proper culture shift. Because even right now, we're nowhere near that point yet. We're nowhere
Yeah.
near the point where, and for example, an Ayatollah can be a woman. We're nowhere near the point where the Pope could be a woman. We're nowhere near the
Yeah.
point where, of the top five, top 10 even, let's say, best-selling Christian people, where more than two of them will be women.
Yep.
These are changes that'll take a while, but I think if you can get to that point, right, what it will mean when we arrive there is that the prescribed nature of gender roles as defined by respective religions will have eroded to the point where it no longer matters, right? Because now it's in a process of erosion, but women still have to do a lot of work in terms of using their particular faith beliefs or the particular works of their faith in order to find ways for them to be legitimate proponents of it. When that changes to the point where you no longer even have to make any concessions from the book, where you can just be like, yo, I'm a woman telling you what God wants. What's your beef? What's your problem? And no one says anything. Then it'll be cool. Right now, you still have to do a lot of careful editing to make that a case.
Yeah.
But I can actually see a world where that's no longer true. Also, I think that this also matters in this is not just in religious spaces, but this is just spaces in general. When you get to
Yeah.
the point where it's no longer remarkable to have your first when you no longer have firsts. It's no longer the first woman or the third woman or oh she's a woman. It's just like oh dog, people do
Yeah.
this shit and it's chill. I like that's I think a way that religion could help in. Obviously, it's not the only place of society wherein the role of women needs to be re-examined and women given much greater agency. But I think that'll when we get to the point where it's even trickled down to religion, then you'll know the battle is mostly won. But you can bet that God fearing people will fight tooth and nail along the way.
Yeah, because the thing is, while while I'm not cynical to the idea that that is something that is possible, I do think the the opponents to something like that happening, they exist in droves,
Yep.
and and the thing is, that kind of progress is dangerous to religion as it is right now,
Yeah.
because because that kind of a shift makes makes Bibles, Qurans, Torahs somewhat obsolete as they exist right now, because that is the word of God, pres- described by whatever faith exists right now. And for that to happen, like you mentioned, there's a lot of editing that's happening. And at what point do they get to the point where people can can comfortably say the Bible can now be changed going forward based on the society we live in.
I feel like that's already been happening, right? Like
Mm.
over time, it's always been happening. The majority of believers of any faith don't know the complete contents of their particular book because there's things in that book that would embarrass our sensibilities now, which is a good thing. It's just people get better and better at ignoring the parts that they don't
Yeah.
like. I do understand your point that it could eventually get to the point where it was so far beyond that mode of morality that we're
Yeah.
like, all right, we can just give up this as a project entirely. But I don't know. You don't want to be cynical. I'm more cynical than you because I believe very much in people's ability to try and hold on to dumb shit. So I think we've still got a good century, maybe two, left in us of people fighting against clearly decent and good things, all in the name of
Yeah.
God. But I think we're still on that track of bullshit for now. But it's getting better. Most
Yeah, it's getting better. It's just I I hesitate to get proud of how it's getting better in terms of the time it's taking
yeah.
and the progress in relation to that time.
This is kind of like when you pass matric on your seventh try. You know, it's good times.
Yeah, that's pretty
You
much
should
what it
you
is.
should be glad you passed matric, but don't take pride in this particular place. Just be like,
Yeah,
okay, this has happened. All right, let's.
like this should have happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
Let's not pat you on the back for common sense.
Or,
Like,
or rather, it's you passing on the seventh try, because each time you pitch to the exams,
yeah,
drunk and with a line of cocaine on your arm.
yeah.
So it's like
That sounds
it's
that
like
sounds
because you could have passed a long time ago. You
yeah.
really could have. This is not just you being a bad student. It's like nah. You fucked this up yourself. You were self sabotaging, and we have been self sabotaging for a fair amount of time.
Yeah.
Hashtag electing sexual predators and rapists. Looking at you, America and South Africa, too. Yeah, that's us. Ish. Ish, that's us, dog. Ain't this a bitch? Actually, I want let's before we wrap up, I want you just to reflect on something, right?
Yeah.
I want you to think about the fact that in recent memory, the two people who've been most famously prominent as being anti-woman or sexual abuse or female harassers,
Yeah.
that being the ex-deputy minister
Mm-hmm.
of education as well as our president, right, were
Yeah.
both defended to the ends of the earth by the ANC Women's League.
Yeah, that's oh man, that you bring up another thing that I'm still grappling with in terms of how to unpack it, right? Because what we've spoken about is how against women who bring up things we tend to be as men. But on the flip side, there are women who are right there beside us. And I'm not sure how to grapple with that because is that our fault? Is like how is that a thing that's happening? And to the level of extremes that it's happening at.
Right? It's just it's really odd because you would this is one of those times as well where like it's very clear sometimes when you're living in an echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
So for instance with me, I would I would be hard pressed to think to myself, oh, I don't know any, for example, I don't know any black dudes that are virulently anti-whites, right? I don't know
Yeah.
any women that, well, I do know some, but like I don't really interact with women who harbor, pretty regressive views about women.
Yeah.
Nor do I hang out, for example, with white people that are exceptionally racist, right?
Yeah.
Nor do I even hang out with that many believers, as it were, right? So within my echo chamber, I could simply by going off statistical analysis and say, oh, of the proportion of people I know, all of them tend to swing a particular way in terms of what
Yeah.
they believe in ideology. Therefore, it's rational to conclude that the rest of the world is in fact like this, right?
Yeah.
And then you interact with the rest of the world and you find out that no. Like,
Like so I was this past week, I came across a video of this guy who was caught cheating. No?
Mm-hmm.
He was caught cheating, and his wife, his pregnant wife, was calling him out on this. While he's there with his side chick, and eventually the argument gets heated, and then out of the blue, the guy starts pounding on her
Mm.
in front of the side chick, in front of onlookers who aren't getting involved. All they're doing is gasping, and that's pretty much the extent of it until security got involved.
Yeah.
And you look at the comment thread of that video.
That's mistake one.
It's mistake one, but we make it because our morbid curiosity leads us
Yeah.
into dark places.
Can't avoid it, man.
So, a good number of the women commenting in that thread, their questions are, what was she doing? What was she thinking?
Yep.
This is a woman who just got pummeled, like beaten as if she was a man. So this is a pregnant woman, ne?
Yeah.
And that's the type of response that elicits from other women. Please find me the logic in that.
Damn.
I saw that I was reading the comments and I was just like, wow, just wow.
That's genuinely terrible. It's like
I mean, I want you to think back on the situation that started Men Are Trash. I want you to think about that situation. That was a situation where a woman was burned. Now,
Mm.
comment threads.
Well, more like melted, but yeah.
Yeah, comment threads. There's a good number of women out there asking,
What did she do?
What did she do?
Yep.
What did she do? Not this is wrong.
Why are you melting
Someone
people?
just like this is like this is a crime. This is a crime. But somehow we have to step out and find a justification for it.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing to try and analyze and understand the mindset of people who do things. But to go looking for justification when something is so egregious, how do we get to that?
I feel like there's certain things in life where even if you don't necessarily have the power to do something about them, right?
Yeah.
Where your mere failure to categorically condemn it makes you a trash person.
Yeah.
It's like not being against this thing is kind of the definition of being a terrible human being. It's like you should be better. If you were better, you'd be against this thing. And yeah, there's some things I just don't see a way around that. As much as I still want to allow people the complete space to determine their own lives, only care about themselves, only care about their close circle of friends, whatever, and you're free to do that. But there are, sometimes when it would cost nothing to just be like, yo, I'm against this. And the argument I often hear against that particular position is that people say that then what's the point? It's basically you're doing moral masturbation at that point, right? You're not really doing anything. You're not engaging in the situation. And I feel like that's extremely short-sighted because morality evolves firstly in communication. We communicate our morality, but it also evolves through signaling, right? You signal you find a particular thing to be morally reprehensible or morally approvable, and I take that signal, measure it against my own code of morality, see where I find that signal to be lacking, see where I find that signal to be overboard. But then I make judgments based on what you're trying to do, what you're signaling. I make judgments on my own personal morality. And we're engaged in this process basically ad nauseum. And this process can't happen if we aren't willing to make public moral claims. Or like if you're not willing to plant a moral flag and say, yo, I find this thing to not subscribe at all to my system of morality, or it does, then you can never actually make moral progress. And that's true especially of situations where you don't do anything, because I feel like very often you can get blinded to the morality of your own actions, right? But you can never really be completely blind to the morality of your proclamations. If I proclaim something, I do it with the full understanding of what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
When I'm engaged, when I'm doing something, a different part of my brain can take over and I can get lost in the action. But if all I'm doing is speaking and saying something, then I have to own my words. I have to own where it's coming from. I have to own
Yeah, you
the
have to think
underlying
about
thought
where it's coming
process.
from.
Exactly. So sometimes if I see something that I know goes against what I think morally, and I don't say something, then it's not that, then I must not see it as being that morally reprehensible, right? Because there
Yeah.
are certain things which, if you were to ask anybody, right, there's certain things which no person would ever be able to keep quiet about, right? So
Mm.
once you're at that point, you're like, okay, you're not willing to be quiet about this issue. Why are you willing to be quiet about this associated but different issue? And then you move from
Yeah.
there. But you have to actually be able, not only able, but you actually have to constantly try to put the people around you into contact with what you subscribe to in moral terms.
Yeah, that's how we call out bad attitudes. That's
Yeah,
how we call out like problematic attitudes that we may have,
yeah,
because we should be constantly evaluating our line of thinking, how we base our ideology, what's the foundation of that ideology, and through contact with other people, we can improve, and that should by and large like not be understated. Because sure, some may make the argument that yes, it's moral masturbation. This is you trying to make yourself feel better, but like you're saying, it's very short-sighted.
yeah. Also, masturbation is pretty great, so I don't know what the beef is. I want to have a moral orgasm one day. That would be amazing, man. Uh, okay.
Please don't involve me in your lunacy. Please.
But all right, just after 90 minutes, Saint D, Ndimphiwe, the homeboy. Thanks for coming on, fam. Uh,
Thanks for having me, bro.
anything you wanna say or shout out to the people before we go?
I don't know if I want to shout out to the people, but all I want to say is, people, let's be better. That's 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 literally the simplest thing. Simplest thing. It requires a bit of effort, but let's be better.
Let's just be better. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this is Curve Thought. Once again, Sean Lamfu, and I'm signing off.